Carrico, Pretty Martin, the rest of you, Caribbean to you wherever you are. Welcome to this another episode of Election Watch. This evening, women in politics. And we say thanks to our viewers, those of you that's on television, GBN's Channel 7, Channel 11, Channel 20. If you are in cable, we say a special good afternoon to those of you that's following us via the Classic platform, Classic 105.5, 105.9 on the FM band. And certainly, it would be remiss if we don't acknowledge those of you that's on social media platforms, be it our webpage at www.gbn.gd, our YouTube channel, and our Facebook page. Indeed, it's a pleasure being here with you on this another Wednesday evening for another episode of Election Watch. My name is Joseph Cadore, and certainly you can feel free to call me JC. My guest this evening, as I've intimated, is an all-female cast, and I feel as though I'm the lone man in here. It doesn't just feel that way, it is that way. I'm the lone male in here, thanks to Mike on the outside and the rest of my technical team. We're not outnumbered. My guest this evening, as we look at women in politics, I want to start with Claudette Joseph, representing the National Democratic Congress. She's joining us remotely. Claudette, good evening, and thanks for being part of the conversation. Joining me in studio, and it just feels rather good though, notwithstanding the fact that we have increased in numbers, but we have joining me direct live in studio is Katisha Williams, and she's representing the New National Party. We say thank you, my dear lady, for being here, and a special warm good afternoon to Andrea Rapier, who is representing Power. Ladies, I say thank you, good evening, and welcome to this another episode of Election Watch. This evening, we focus on women in politics. We are not going to mince much, play around much, because time is fast spent. We're going to jump straight into it. And I want to kickstart it with you, Lady Williams. If I want to ask you, what in your estimation are the greatest socio-economic challenges that are affecting Grenadians, but even more so the niche women in this country, what would your response be?
Okay, well, first of all, good night, Joseph. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here, and good night to my colleagues, Andrea and Claudette. And you were serious when you said that you're getting right to it, because that's quite a heavy question to start off with. But I would say the major socioeconomic problems that are faced by women in particular in Grenada, well, there are a number of problems, but I think the disparity in employment may be the one that is more apparent, just based on the figures. But before we get into the negative, Joseph, I would just want to start off by saying that Grenada has been an example for other Caribbean countries and other countries in the world in terms of the level of female representation in government. We have 7 out of 15 representatives in our House of Representatives, and then we have three female senators out of 13. It used to be 4 when Senator Kim George was there, and that represents 46% and 30% respectively in both houses, and it makes us 6th in the world for female representation in government. So we've always been looked upon as an example in the Caribbean and lauded because of the efforts that we have made, and in particular the NMP has made, in ensuring that there is adequate female representation in government. And because we have such a large complement of female representatives, ministers, and senators combined, it means that we are able to look at problems that affect women more acutely and deal with them in a manner that is, I don't want to say more effective, but because we are closely related to the circumstances and the issues, we're more passionate about it, and we put a lot of time and effort into it. Now, women have been making a lot of strides in Grenada over the years. But as I mentioned earlier in relation to your initial question, there seems to be a disparity in terms of the level of unemployment amongst women as compared to men. So I think the recent statistics from the second quarter in 2021 would show that there's about 19.2% unemployment among women as compared to I'll just round it off to 14% as compared to men. Well, there isn't a big difference, but we still see that we have a majority of women who are unemployed. And our government has recognized that, and we have been putting a number of measures in place to encourage employment among our female population.
Okay.
So some of those measures include special programs specifically aimed at women. One of them is the WISE program, that's the acronym, and it sought to teach certain skills to women in the areas of agro-processing, commercial food production, restaurant and bar management. You have programs such as SIAP, which have avenues for women to obtain funding for small businesses. You have the GDB, which has special programs for women to obtain financing for small businesses. But you also have a thrust, especially from the Ministry of Education, to encourage women to enter what we would term non-traditional sectors. So there's an encouragement for women to do more STEM subjects. There's an encouragement for women to do electrical engineering, building technology, air conditioning, refrigeration. I remember there was even a robotics competition for female students some time ago. I think it was 2017, I'm not sure. So the intention is to show women that there are many options for their empowerment and their employment.
So I'm getting the sense, though, without cutting you, because as the program progresses, we're going to get into some of the details, but I'm getting the sense that in your estimation, unemployment seems to be one of those critical areas.
Yes.
Or unemployment.
It's an area that generally it affects men and women, but because there are more unemployed women than men, then we can highlight it as something that specifically affects women.
Later on, we'll delve into some of the underlying currents that drives those issues. Andrea, what comes to mind? Those issues that affect women when we look at our current situation here at home.
What comes to mind when we look at challenges, and as I listen to my co-guest here, is one, first of all, if we look at unemployment and we say there are more unemployed women than men, is the 19% seeking employment, or are some of them domestic workers? Are they at home with their children? Because then they are not unemployed. And it's important that we don't consider a mother staying at home with her children to be part of the unemployed category, unless of course she seeks employment. Then it's categorized. So there must be some respect there when it comes to the domestic duties. And I'm a mom myself, so I totally understand that. And I chose to stay at home. So I wasn't unemployed. I was fully employed. At a deeper level of the challenges, and yes, we do have the positive things of the high rate of women in government and so forth, but fundamentally, women in Grenada are underprivileged in many ways, as is men now in this society and the state of our economy and the social issues that we have. But when we look at domestic abuse, there's a high percentage of women that are victimized. When we look at incest and rape, the same thing. So there isn't enough opportunity for the independence of women in the country, because there isn't enough opportunity for the independence of Grenadian citizens in the country. And so women by default will be affected by that. So I think it's a deeper problem. A woman could be professional and she could be employed, she could be in a managerial position and very powerful at work, and going home to domestic abuse. That is not uncommon in our culture, that a professional woman could come to work with makeup over her bruises. I know several who have done that. So if we're looking at the wellness of women, then looking at that small percentage that are walking in a suit every morning to their profession is not the full paradigm of the overview of the opportunities and what's happening for our women as a population. And I think
do we have a crisis?
We have a crisis, absolutely. Grenada has one of the highest rates of domestic abuse in the Caribbean. So we do have a crisis, and you see it in our women. You see it in our women, and you see it in our young girls as well.
Okay. I'm going to get to you, Katisha. I just want to complete the rungs while we get so for Katisha, she's just saying you're saying it's unemployment. Andrea, you highlighting the fact that abuse, women being marginalized, and I think Katisha would agree that. Claudette.
Yes. Good evening.
How are you?
Good evening. I'm fine, and might I say thanks for the opportunity for appearing on this panel with my colleagues here. And special good evening to all of the viewers of GBN, wherever you may be, online, on your traditional radio, and on the social media platforms. And before I answer the question, Joseph, I would just like to take just 1 minute to recognize and pay tribute to a fallen great Grenadian woman, and that is Celia Klein Edwards QC, who recently passed away, and the legal fraternity, we had a special sitting in her honor this morning, and of course tomorrow we will lay her finally to rest. Because she is my colleague, and because she's she was rather an outstanding Grenadian woman, I thought it appropriate to extend condolences to her family on my own behalf and on behalf of all of the leadership and members of the National Democratic Congress. Celia Klein stood out because she was the first in many respects. She was the first female island scholar in Grenada, and in fact that was a mighty glass ceiling that she shattered, because in fact at one point up to the 60s only boys were eligible to be declared island scholar. So Celia broke that glass ceiling in the early 70s. I think it was in 73 or 74. She became the first female island scholar. She then became the first female Queen's Counsel from Grenada, and the first, as Dr. Alexis pointed out in this special sitting this morning, the first Caribbean-trained lawyer to appear in person before the Privy Council. And she was a great inspiration and a help to a lot of us, particularly the female lawyers. So I again extend my sympathies to her children, Crystal, Celine, Delani, Emil, and her nephew who's at the law office of George E. Klein, Dorian, and all of the staff there.
Okay.
So to answer your question on the socio-economic challenges facing women in Grenada at this time, I dare say that there are many, and that stems from the systemic disparity in the way men are treated as against women. And that has to do in terms of some of the positions held, the wages, the responsibilities thrust on women, so that the cost of living and the ability to comfortably maintain their families is perhaps the greatest challenge we as women face in Grenada. Because as you know, our poverty rate is in the 40s. I think it's in the region of 45%. And women bear the brunt of these hardships because women are the primary caregivers and nurturers and providers for our Grenadian families. Over 80% of families in Grenada are headed by single women, so that it's single mothers. So that it's a matter of great concern that we have more women unemployed. It means more women on the breadline than men, while at the same time, more women take care of the average Grenadian family than men. And it is commendable that Grenada has, as a matter of fact, since the 60s, been one of the leaders, if not the leading Caribbean island, one of the leading islands in terms of having women in political power, so to speak, in the Legislative Council in the 1960s. You know, you're talking about Gertrude Putin and Nadia Benjamin and these women. Gary had a reputation for pushing women forward. His own wife, Cynthia Gary, was a member of parliament. I think the first female. Then you have, your Gloria St. Bernard, your Wapen Neds. So we have a long history of women in politics and women in the corridors of political power.
Well, let me ask you to Claudette, because I think, and I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you extensively. But would you, in your estimation, and I'm going to just ask you to the other ladies today with the panelists so they can respond as well, because I think we all agree collectively that we've made changes, we've made progress, we have highlighted that. We look at the role that women they've played within the political sphere and otherwise. We look at the development where we see it. We can take it even within your own region. We've had Eugenia Charles in Dominica. We've had Portia Simpson in Jamaica. In Barbados, we have Mia Motley. And even here at home, we've had our own stalwarts. And certainly, we also would take the opportunity to extend condolence to Judy Williams, the passing of Judy Williams. And she's literally has been a stalwart. But we look at all of those achievements, and yet, ladies, it begs the question, while we have seemingly made so many strides in those areas of development, addressing those social issues, yet it almost seems as though for every 5 steps you make forward, we make an even greater strides backwards.
Well,
Katisha.
Well,
I disagree. Was that for me?
Yes, Claudette?
Sorry, no problem. But I was about to say when you stopped me, Joseph, that while we have a commendable percentage of women, for example, in our parliament today, we are not seeing that translated into a progressive agenda that promotes women's issues. We're not getting the sense that although we have quite a 7 or more women in the cabinet of Grenada and certainly the parliament, we don't get the sense that their numbers or their presence is really influencing policy and ultimately legislation in the way that it should. So that, for me as a Grenadian woman, is one concern. How impactful are they among their peers?
And I think we definitely need
sometimes
to
you wonder whether it's just for statistics purposes or to make us look good on the international TV, because I know these are women of substance.
We're going to get back to that, Claudia. Katisha, I see you're itching to get a point of the tip of the tongue.
Yes, because I beg to disagree.
Disagree with?
I do not agree that women have not progressed in this country as much as
No, I'm not sure disagreement with whom on that.
or not to the extent that we would like to portray. I don't think that's a fair assessment, and I would warn against us adopting an attitude of victimhood, because that seems to be the general state in the rest of the world. As I mentioned earlier, whenever Grenada attends these international fora or regional fora, our experience with women leadership and women empowerment in Grenada is very different from other countries, right? As a woman myself, I have never felt marginalized because of my gender, and I think that is the experience of many other women. We have Miss Joseph herself, who's an attorney, as part of a bar that is filled with women attorneys. I dare to say perhaps a majority of women attorneys. We have women holding most of the senior management and administrative positions in Grenada. Principals, permanent secretaries, managers, bank managers even. Most of the graduates of tertiary education, most of the persons who pursue university education are women in a large, the disparity in these areas really falls on the side of the men.
Well, let me ask you though, Katisha.
Let me finish.
Let me ask. I just want to butt in here though.
I want to finish. I want to finish my thought. So women have been taking advantages of these opportunities to start their small businesses, opportunities for education, taking advantage of scholarships, entering what is regarded as the more esteemed professions, more so than men. So I do not believe that we should put on this cloak of victimhood, because that seems to be the general state of the world. I think that we have progressed here as women far more than we like to give credit for.
But you have to agree though, Katisha, that while those might be true, and we're going to get to Andrea, we now live in a global village. So while yes, our little sphere, it may seem as though, okay, when I'm in my little cubicle, I'm going great guns. I'm going 100 miles an hour.
We were talking about
and then you open.
I thought we were talking about the Grenadian experience, which is what I'm speaking to. I just want to mention something Claudette mentioned also, that we are not in the position to really influence policy and legislature that empowers women, and I disagree. We have an Attorney General who is female. In the past few years, during NMP's term, we have introduced a number of legislation that are beneficial to women. We have the Electronics Crimes Act to deal with crimes perpetuated mainly against women and young children. We had amendments to the Sexual Offenses or the Criminal Offenses Act, which made provisions for marital rape. We had amendments to the Police Standing Orders 2017, which dealt with regulations and procedures for dealing with victims of gender-based violence. We have a gender-based violence unit. We have a gender-based violence hotline. We have a special victims unit to deal with matters relating to gender-based violence.
But,
we have the Cedars Home, which is responsible for housing and providing care and support for such victims. And this, we have the Grand Bacolet Juvenile Center. Of course, they service all youth, but also including women. And these are initiatives that were implemented by a cabinet that's 46% women. So I think it's unfair to say that we have not seen the translation of the representation of women in Parliament to legislation and initiatives.
Okay, you hold that thought, right? Okay, Andrea, what say you?
I have two things to say. I'm going to address what was just said, but before I do, I want to point to something, because our discussion, though early, is beginning to sound like party in politics versus women in politics. And I think as women in politics, we have a responsibility to speak to women. This is a great responsibility in this moment we have. And I don't think any of us showed up, but maybe some of us did, with the intention of promoting our parties. I would like to talk about women and what we can do for women, and what Grenadian women, how they can value and benefit from what we can bring to the table, first of all. And now to respond to both parts of the dialogue. It doesn't matter what policy or legislation you write, if it's not implemented with the ordinary individual, blue-collared Grenadian in St. Mark's, in St. John's, in Baghdad, in Satés, if they don't feel the effect and benefit directly from any policy, it is as best as it hadn't been written. There must be a translation in implementation, and in the Caribbean and in Grenada, we're very good at making laws and making everything look really good. Our jewelry looks good. But when you get to the core of implementation, things fall apart. And as long as people's lives are falling apart, as long as women who go to university, who get the scholarships, return home, and there is no employment for the cost and value of the education they received, there's been a breakdown in the system. Yes, there are these policies on gender-based violence and sexual crimes, but unless the woman is empowered with alternatives, that when she takes advantage of that policy, she feels safe and she has an option to create a quality life for herself and her family, the policy is dead. The policy does not walk in the front door and set her free. The policy doesn't say to the woman who is afraid and has no economic means that she will be fed and she can feed her children. So beyond the policy, there must be structures implemented in culture to support the areas of breakdown that cause the dependence and the codependence in the situations that women face. When it comes to opportunity, several things were mentioned here. If there's a disparity of opportunity, not just for women in Grenada, for Grenadians on a whole. And you mentioned our global society. The globe is our neighborhood now. If we compare Grenada, what Grenadian wages are, the quality of life in Grenada for the mass population. Claudette mentioned our poverty rate, which I talk about all the time, being over 40%. We have to look at progress for how it affects the least of us, not the best of us, not the upper class, not the aristocrat, but how it affects the least of us. How does it affect the mother at home who has no means and did not have a scholarship and did not get the education? Until your policy affects her, there is no policy. However, I don't think we're here tonight to talk about the policy. I think we should talk about how women can engage the political sphere and how we can actually have an impact that affects the least of us so that all of us can move forward together. Okay. And 110,000 of us, I think it's possible for the section of women in Grenada to be able to benefit from all of us who call ourselves leaders in any sector at all.
Fair enough. The conversation is getting starting to ripen, but we have to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to delve into some of the underlying currents. We'll talk about the issue of education, empowering women, and really and truly how you women, that's literally, while we try to separate it, Andrea, I often say the bigger challenge is how do you separate the women on the inside, your gender, from the reality that all your professional women have down your accolades, your academic accolades, and jumped into the political arena. Can we separate it? I'm not quite sure. That conversation continues when we come back right here on Election Watch, Women in Politics.
If there was ever a time to keep and stay healthy, it's now! We at Hills and Valley are here to help you take deliberate steps to maintain your health. We stayed true to maintaining the most comprehensive rates while stocking the widest range of medicines and health devices, including personal protective equipment. There are so many benefits shopping with us. You get great savings through discounts for senior citizens and reward cards for loyal customers. Ask about owning yours today. Visit us at Halifax and Grenville Street, St. George, Jubilee Street opposite the Grenville Bus Terminal, and at Hillsborough, Carriacou. Our wholesale distribution on Halifax Street also stocks the widest range of pharmaceuticals. We are with you on the hills and in the valleys. We are Hills and Valley Pharmacy.
When you need your prescription filled or you require non-prescribed medication, supplements, or all your personal needs, visit Gittins Healthcare at locations on Wall Street, Grand Anse, Victoria Street, Granville, and Central Deputy Street, Wharf. Gittins Healthcare aims to provide an exceptional personalized pharmacy experience. Additionally, children under 5 and adults 55 years and over will enjoy 10% discount on purchases of $20 and over on prescription medication. Stop settling for less. Visit Gittins Healthcare, where your health is our priority.
Saturday, May 28th, Flavors Entertainment presents Flavors of Calypso and Extempo. Featuring live from Trinidad, the reigning Calypso monarch, Terry Lyons. Also from Trinidad, reigning Extempo king, Brian London, as he comes up against Powder and Papa. Presented by and performing live, the big band, Sour Serpent, the ever-threatening Big Shay, Beast Scholar, Woodsman Kelly, Cox, Smallies, Teacher Eddie, and more. All backed by the Hitwave Band, hosted by Lester. Admission $50 to get your tickets now from all popular ticket locations nationwide. Flavors of Calypso, Saturday, May 28th. Spice Basket, Calypso is back. Sponsors: Playway, Coca-Cola, Dasani Water, Ken Flav Brokerage, First Class Mufflers, Mitchell's Pharmacy, GBN Radio and TV, Innovative Shipping, McIntyre Brothers, Party Shipping, Dickon Mitchell, and Digicel.
Thank you. Welcome back to the program Election Watch this evening. A special focus on women in politics highlight. We're looking at the challenges that women they face, but certainly we're also looking at the strides that we've made as a society. And certainly, I can safely tell you, the only challenge is that whatever happens while we offset, it stays in here. Or else, trust me. So, ladies, we're agreeing and disagreeing on a number of issues. We've highlighted the challenge of poverty. We have agreed that we're in a crisis situation. Crisis in the context of, Katisha, women, there's 19% unemployment rate. Claudette highlighted the fact, agreed with the fact that for women alone it is 19%, that you hinted. Claudette talked about, we talk about the disparities. We continue to highlight the fact that all these other socio-economic issues that ultimately forces us into a reality that, listen, things are not the way we want it to be. The question, though, and we talked about, and I'm going to hit to you, Katisha, and then we'll get to Claudette. What are those underlying factors? What are those underlying factors that are putting women at a disadvantage?
Well, firstly, I will just like to say, as a government senator, I think I am obligated to correct misconceptions and to highlight the programs and policies of government that that impact women. After all, we are speaking about women in politics. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, I think women face a number of challenges, and I believe firstly, it has to do with our culture and our perceived traditional roles. The woman is seen as the caregiver, the caretaker. Historically, we have assumed a subservient role in society. Our purpose has been perceived as a support for the male figure, who is the head of the home, the head of the household, the head of the church, the head of government. So traditionally, that has been our role. And even in the face of more education, even in the face of more advancements in technology and general changes in perceptions and the availability of more opportunities for women, there are these cultural, traditional beliefs are still very much a part of our society.
And as a result?
And as a result, there is still sexism, there is still discrimination, there is still an unwillingness by men sometimes to recognize the intelligence, the contributions of the woman. There's still a reluctance to elevate women to positions of power, and I'm speaking globally now, not in the Grenadian context. So changing these cultural these cultural ideas and these traditional beliefs, many of which are grounded in religion also, is something that is generational.
Well, let me ask you, how do you see yourself, one, as a professional woman, because you are a professional woman who's gotten into politics, and that is one of the shifts that we were seeing. But how do you see yourself, Katisha, as being a change agent? Because you make a very critical point that while we seem to be going having these all over the place, you get the sense that, or as a nation collectively, some would argue that we're not going anywhere. But how do you see yourself as being that change agent?
Well,
what can you offer?
As a nation, women are not going anywhere. I don't really support that
you don't?
statement. That as a nation,
I mean, collectively, there may be those who probably they're well ahead of others.
I think globally, there has been an unwillingness to support women in powerful leadership positions. There are about only 26 heads of state, heads of government in about 24 countries throughout the world. And the reason why women may be hesitant to enter politics is because these cultural perceptions are still there. They don't get the funding. They have to balance. They still play the primary caregiver role in the family. So it means that they will have to balance childcare and taking care of the home with these additional leadership responsibilities. So women need a sound support structure, I believe, more than men. And in some countries and regions throughout the world, that is not available. For me, going back to your question, I was blessed to have a family, mom and dad, who always encouraged me and instilled in me the idea that possibilities are endless and limitless as long as you applied yourself. So that is how I've always seen myself growing up, not really as a woman trying to break barriers, but just someone that if I work hard and dedicate myself, I can achieve my goals. There are also a lot of female role models for women these days. In Grenada, we have women in civil society, women in politics, women in media, women in business, in banking, in industry, at all levels in Grenada, who are local role models. And then regionally, we have the same. We have women in politics. We have Mia Motley on the international stage, Kamala Harris, the leader of the EU, the head of the WTO, heads of states in Africa, women who look like us. So I think in this era, in my generation growing up, there were a lot of female role models.
Okay,
and
fair enough.
Along with that and the support of my family, I was able to I guess achieve what I have thus far. But I don't speak for everybody, but this was a personal question. But I have never felt, fortunately, disadvantaged or marginalized because of my gender. But I do acknowledge that there are many women who do, and I attribute that to the lack of that support structure in their life and the influence of naysayers and men who seek to confine them to their traditional roles.
Confining them to the traditional, time we're going to get. Claudette.
Yes.
Katisha started to speak about, and I know I'm asking you this, and I'm keeping an eye on Andrea for a lot of reasons, based on a conversation that took place off camera. But would you agree, disagree? We continue to highlight it because very much you get the sense that we've come a long way, but yet there is so much we have not achieved as collectively as a people. There are policies in place, there are programs in place, but very often there are those who argue that all of the programs that is invested by government only serve, and when I say government, I mean across the spectrum, only serves as a smokescreen for what the really underlying issues are. Do you get the sense that our political leaders, they have committed themselves, that they have the backbone enough to deal with some of the social issues that's forcing women into a corner, Claudette?
Well, you see, yeah, and that's the thing. When you speak of the underlying factors that put women at a disadvantage, we have to closely examine our leaders. All right. So, for example, there was a time in our history when women could not own property. Women could not vote. If a single woman got pregnant and she was in the government service, and I'm talking now up to the 1960s, a single woman gets pregnant working with the government, she had to resign, right? That's our legacy, that's our history, that's the background from which we come. So when I say that the 46% women who sit in our parliament, we are not really feeling the impact of that. I'm speaking of, let's take, for example, the era of the revolution, a short period, 4.5 years. And women were deeply engaged in the revolution. And there were some influential women. They had Phyllis Cole, they had Jacqueline Kreff, you had Val Cornwall, you had Decima Williams, you had what's the name, Dorcas Brave Boy. These really powerful women influencing what happened. And what did we see? We see for the first time in Grenada the introduction of legislation providing for paid maternity leave, because women are, as I said in the beginning, are the primary providers, the drivers of our society. Let us face that. And it was realized that certain conditions negatively affected women and the way they produced and functioned. So they were concerned about not spending sufficient time with their newborn after delivery. They had to go right back to work. So what did we have? Clearly influenced by the women in power at the time, for the first time we had paid maternity leave in Grenada. Women were being the main providers, main educators. What we had the CPE, we had a plenitude of scholarships at the tertiary level. We had the NINSTEP, we have all these programs that lifted women educationally. And we know, and I can tell you, I'm living proof that education is the main instrument that lifts people out of poverty. So you had deliberate programs aimed at lifting women. Women were concerned that even after they got their 3 months maternity leave, they felt their children were still too small to leave behind. And they had problems finding people to care for the children while they went to work. That is the era when we had increase in the number of community daycare, the daycare centers as we know it today. That was from during the revolution. So I am saying that we need to feel the impact of the 46% women in our halls of power, in our executive and our legislature, right? For example, we have a situation, over 80% of our families are headed by single families, single women, or women in a common law union. Yet, we still do not have legislation that really protects a woman in a common law, in common law unions.
Protects her protects her in what sense, Claudette?
Child is a child education, yes?
Claudette, you're making reference to women being single parents. Are you suggesting that is a direct failure of the government, or could that possibly be?
No. I'm asking.
Or could that possibly be women stepping away from those traditionalist positions that society holds and opting? Listen, I can easily be a professional woman as well as being a mother.
No. That is a historical feature of our society, because 90% or 99% of us, Joseph, are descendants of slaves, and it was illegal to get married during slavery.
But that's history now. That's history.
So that is where we come from. That's what is now our culture. So most of our children are born to parents out of wedlock, and that's not a lot of times not by choice. That has been so historically in our Caribbean civilization.
Okay.
The one that started with slavery.
Okay.
So
okay.
I'm saying we need to adopt programs, policies, and legislative frameworks that will speak to the issues that affect women and bring equilibrium, try to bring balance between men and women. Even today, correct me if I'm wrong, even today in the debushing program that is so popular, the women are paid less. Isn't that so? Women are paid less. So we see the disparity. They do the same work, same hours, but women are paid less. And that's a legacy of slavery and the plantation. And then when immediately after emancipation,
so let me just butt in here, Claudette.
So I'm saying we need to really pay attention to our societal realities and adopt programs and policies, and as Andrea correctly said, implement them.
Well, that's why I was asking you to hold for me, because I want to go back to the question that, so you're pointing towards policies. Katisha is pointing towards policies. Andrea is saying, enough of the policies, let's get down to identifying and providing workable solutions. Andrea, is that what you're saying? Why is that not being done, though? Why is it so difficult?
It isn't difficult. It just has not been the ambition. When is the ambition? It won't be difficult, because there is a need and there are means to the need.
So are you suggesting that our political leaders are comfortable for having women play second fiddle in society?
I'm not sure if they're comfortable with them playing second fiddle. I know they're not uncomfortable with them playing second fiddle. However, I will say that I don't particularly look at it as if women are playing second fiddle. The programs that are tailored toward the empowerment and lifting of women all have something in common. They ignore the men and the boys. Mm-hmm. Who is the abuser of the abused woman? Who is the father that abandoned the woman to single parenthood? In cohabitation relationships, who is the man that has chosen not to marry her? So there are issues that affect men if improved, if empowerment is brought to men, if more education is brought to men, if more opportunity is brought to men, it changes the dynamic and quality of life for the woman. Mm-hmm. So we have been spinning one coin and expecting to get a return, but a one-sided coin has no value. So we need to look at women's lives holistically, to all the areas of impact, all the access points to her quality of life. If the school would provide proper nutritional breakfast and lunch, that single mom only has one meal to think about that day. So this is why I say it isn't difficult. It's just that no one is uncomfortable enough with the situation to prioritize it. There are other priorities. And there was a reference earlier to women in entrepreneurship and how there's been a swell in that. Yes, there's been a swell. And these women entrepreneurs are struggling because $25,000, EC by the way, even if she goes through the program and she gets the $25,000, it's not sustainable. It's not enough to create the business opportunity to sustain her family. So basically she's hustling. And our women and our men are hustling on whatever means they can. This week it's one thing, the next week is the next, because they need to put food on the table. What has been happening is that we are taking advantage, and when I say we, I say leaders, have taken advantage of the surviving spirit, the fighting spirit of the Grenadian people. We're making it, so we're all right, they think. But we are suffering consequences. We have young women who leave Grenada and go to other islands to strip so that they can have an income. While they can have an income here in our resourceful country. So there are many issues affecting women beyond policy. And when we implement those policies cannot fit one side of the coin. And many of us have been privileged with supportive family and a support network. But when you represent the population, you have to have empathy. Empathy is my ability to feel what you feel, experience your experience, engage your pain as if it's mine, and that motivates me to bring the solution as if it's my solution.
Do you think, Katisha, that our current crop of politicians, they do have that capacity, empathy, that softer side that allows them to appreciate what the ordinary man is going through?
The ordinary man is in mankind, right?
Yes.
Okay. Of course. Women are, well, we're known as the nurturing sex. We have that ability to care, to nurture, and I think that has translated with our female political leaders into concrete actions that have positively impacted women in Grenada. Most of our female politicians currently are persons who have come from humble beginnings. There are persons who live amongst their village members. In fact, they were plucked and brought into the political sphere because of the work they have done in the community, in their schools, and the initiative they have shown in their communities. So in our context, it's not a case of I guess an elitist group of women who have assumed power and we sit on our high horses and we don't empathize with the common man.
But I think the question that begs to be asked, though,
Grenadian society is not like that, Joseph. If you look at our female politicians, they are grassroots people who work among the members of their and are very closely attached.
But some say, yeah, that does not mean might be true. But remember, in one of our previous episodes, we kept talking about the culture of politics.
Yes.
That while you enter the political arena from a grassroots mentality, when you get in there, some say they lose the common touch.
That may happen. That may happen. People change with circumstances. But I can only speak to the women that I have worked with and that I have been exposed to, and they are some of the most empathetic, caring, and hardworking people.
So why then do we still, ladies, why then do we still grapple with those very many issues, social issues that we highlight?
Because Rome wasn't built in a day, Joseph. We're not going to eliminate poverty. We're not going to eliminate gender-based violence. We're not going to eliminate unemployment at the drop of a hat. That is simply unrealistic. But we are making major strides and implementing major policies that is creating a dent in those statistics. I just want to go back to one thing. Claudette was speaking of the great strides that were made during the revolution, and I'm a big fan of our revolutionary period, and I applaud all of the social changes that were made during that period, and I acknowledge the impact that they've had. And I believe it was because of that revolutionary spirit and culture that so many of our young women and not all of them are young.
You would have to agree, though, ladies, that those changes, the growth that we saw in that 4.5 years, was based on the fact that Grenadians got to a point where they decided,
yes,
I've had enough.
Yes,
I need to take control of my life.
I agree
and
with
some are saying that we get the impression that we slowly slipping back into that period.
No, I don't believe so. I think the changes were so impactful at that period because we were in such a depressed place. The rights that were available for our people back then, or social conditions, were so much worse than even my generation can imagine. So the changes that were made during that period would have been extraordinary, and it would have had a great impact. But what if you would allow me to just make this point, that doesn't take away from the strides that we continue to make currently. There's this belief that the actions of our legislature and our parliament has not produced any major and real benefits, and that our policies have not been implemented, and I disagree. I mean, there are actually figures, numbers of families impacted, number of women that have gained employment, number of women that were able to repair their houses, number of scholarships that were given. There are concrete statistics that show that these policies have been implemented. So I don't think it's fair to make just a blanket statement that these policies are not being implemented. That is not so. And one final thing, Joseph.
No one made that statement.
I would just like to highlight a number of very crucial, important legislative changes. I already mentioned a few of them that have just been ignored.
I don't want us to have to go to list them all out because there are other issues that I wanted to discuss.
Let me mention three of them. The Child Protection Act 2011, the Child Protection and Adoption Act. There is currently an amendment to the Labor Code that is being revised that addresses sexual harassment in the workplace, which women, of course, are mainly the victims of. That was not addressed in previous legislation. And there's a sexual harassment bill that is currently being revised. And I would just like to point out for the benefit of the listeners that it is illegal under our current labor code to pay women any less than men for equal work. So if that is happening in any form, it is illegal, and our legislation provides for that.
Okay, let's hold it there. We're keeping our eyes on the clock in case you are just joining us this election watch. Claudette, I'm coming back to you, and then I'm going to swing it go back to Andrea. Do you get the sense, and we continue to highlight the programs, but I, for one, if you ask me, I think, and you will share your thoughts with me, Claudette, that very often a lot of programs, they're implemented, but there are very often very little measures that are put in place systemically that allows for measurement. How do we measure the growth? So I give you, I go to the seed program, I give you X, Y, and Z, but some have argued that's it. How do we measure the growth and success of those programs? Do you think that has been done? That has been done by our administrators?
Not very well at all. You see, when you are not focused on permanently lifting up your people and also continuously transforming your society and growing and transcending what you inherited, you will be marking time. You will be giving people the impression that you're helping them up when all you're doing repeatedly is giving a hand out. And Andrea made the point, you give a little bit of money that you know or ought to know can't really help this small business, this woman trying to start a small business, really get off the ground. So what do? basically you put that woman in debt because she has to pay back a loan, right? That you gave to her, that you probably knew would not bear fruit as intended.
Hold on, Claudette. Hold on,
Joseph.
You're giving her a loan hold on. Hold for me, Claudette. Because I want to make sure that we're clear with what is it I'm hearing you saying. That you're giving her she's into a program, you're giving her money that you know is not going to bear fruits. Is that what you're suggesting that our political leaders that they do?
It's insufficient.
First of all, I was going to make the point, just to correct my friend Katisha a bit, the child protection legislation was not implemented by the NNP. I don't want to get into NNP and this, but just to correct.
NNP.
That was 2011. The NDC
I didn't mention a party.
Neither was the amendment dealing with the sexual harassment under the labor code. Just to correct.
But I didn't say
right?
NNP. I just mentioned the year. So I said 2011.
You probably should have given the NDC credit for that.
Yes. So I'm just saying, Joseph, right? I'm saying Andrea made a very valid point earlier, where women, we spoke about the GDB program. That's the reference I was drawing. And a $25,000 loan or so is given. And knowing, because when you apply for a loan, you must put a project proposal forward that will show what you plan to do and how you plan to make this project successful. And in assessing the loan or the proposal, those doing so will know whether or not the sum you are borrowing will be sufficient to get the business off the ground and to make it viable or not. So what are we doing? Are we just giving temporary handouts and setting up people for failure? Or are we really helping people, putting programs in place that will lift people permanently?
And that's the last question just before the break, Claudette, because we have to take a break. When I come back, though, I have some round of questions that I need to throw at you wonderful ladies. We get it deep and personal now when we get into the next round. But we take a quick commercial break. When we come back, it is Election Watch this evening, Women and Politics. That's the conversation. We'll be right back.
Imagine having the home of your dreams. Imagine investing in that piece of property you can call your own. Imagine finally doing that home improvement project you've always been thinking about. It's time to stop imagining and start doing. Let the GUT Credit Union help you take the first step with fantastic rates, affordable repayments, and reduced legal fees. Make the move. Get better terms on your mortgage. Use your home equity to make those dreams a reality. Act now. There's really no place like home. GUT Credit Union. It's where you belong.
Hey man, when we come online, you only juking up the phone.
Yeah boy, now as I say, they have an app. I can't find it. I check Play Store. I do a Google search. I can't find it. Man, I get fed up, man.
Nah man, because you look in the wrong place. The app is web-based. You access it via your web browser, right? You can add it to your home screen or your desktop, like any regular app. Watch, look, I have it on my phone, right? And you can access it or add it to any device, your computer, your tablet, any device.
Well, how are doing that and I can't find it?
All you have to do is open your browser, right? And type mobile.nawasa.gd. And voila, you see?
Just so?
Yes, and you can download it or access it via the web. Once you have a reliable internet connection, right, you can run the app anywhere, anytime.
So, how I adding that to my home screen?
You click on those three dots, right, or your web browser setting, and look for the option to install app or add to home screen. Easy peasy. The Nawasa app is versatile, fast-paced, and always up to date because it's web-based. Once a change is made to the app, it updates automatically, no hassle.
Mobile.nawasa.gd, your customer support companion.
When a loved one passes on, we all need the comfort, support, and guidance of a trusted friend. You can rely on LaCour Brothers Funeral Home. We provide a personalized professional service that exceeds all expectations. Our dedicated staff responds to your every need with the greatest detail, ensuring affordability with a variety of options. Our upgraded state-of-the-art facilities, spacious air-conditioned chapel with live internet streaming, a modern, environmentally safe crematorium, the only of its kind on island, private viewing spaces, large on-site repast center, a modern transportation fleet. Join our burial society today and make personalized arrangements for that final moment. As you prepare to enter your loved one into eternal rest, visit or call LaCour Brothers Funeral Home and select a package that brings added comfort to the entire family. LaCour Brothers Funeral Home and Burial Society, continuing a tradition of excellence.
Thank you. Welcome back to Election Watch this evening. The focus on women in politics. I just want to share with you, ladies, this is a quotation from one of the former presidential candidates, female presidential candidates from the United States, where she says, one of the struggles that underlies all of our policy battles is the continued lack of women in position of power. She says, from corporate boardrooms to the court and political leadership around the world, the lack of women in senior positions continues to hinder our progress on issues that from pay to humanitarian aids, discrimination in all forms. She then says, the sooner we understand that the lack of women in leadership role holds back not only women, but all people, the sooner we will be able to advance society as a whole. I'm getting the sense, ladies and gentlemen, and for all of you men on Saturday that don't have enough spine to accept a lot of things, that there is a shift, Andrea. There's a paradigm shift. Political, independent, academic women are saying, you know what, I've got my degree. However, but with that being said, though, I want to throw this one at you. And I know you did say you wanted to comment on something, but one of the issues that has affected our women out there, as we talk about lack of financing and all of that, is that a lot we've had in our recent past the issue of British America, CLECO, SGL, Capital Bank, and a lot of these is matters that has rendered a lot of our families and women at a financial deficit. And I'm asking you this one now, in your capacity, one, as the leader of power, what can you say to the Grenadian people, these women that are desperately looking for hope? You know what? If you give me a chance, I can turn this around for you. Andrea, starting with you.
First, yes, I will just echo what you said. If you give yourself a chance, because by choosing power, you choose yourself. If you give yourself a chance, here's how we will turn this situation that we're talking about tonight. Because earlier I referred to the solution as being a simple one that has to be prioritized. And I could tell you now what that solution is. You see, every time a woman or a family enters the system for support in any form, whether it's a domestic abuse issue, whether she's going through a business training program and need financing, whether it's a child abuse situation, or just coming for food or support for clothing or help with school, there is a broader spectrum that we've been missing. And it's this. Every time someone enters the system, and I'll say a woman now, tonight, for this discussion, there should be a broad assessment of needs. She may come in for domestic abuse, but there are 7 other needs that are important for her sustainability, for her well-being. If we begin with an assessment of needs, address the pressing needs, so the needs is safety, let's address safety. But once safety has been provided, we take her through a cycle of services that will make her independent and economically free, so that there is no repeat of her situation. And not just for women, but for men as well. So she needs food from one organization, she gets it. She's now dovetailed through a sustainable ecosystem that addresses every area of need and development, whether it's education, whether it's skill development, whatever the development is that she needs to be independent and well, that can be provided. Policy like that, when you have policies that were spoken about, that the NMP has put in place, without an ecosystem where you can assess the needs and address the whole individual, the whole family need, the whole community, then you're just creating a supply chain for further abuse and for further depreciation of human value. So that's Power's approach to that issue, is to let's look at what the individual needs are, and then let's address every need until the family or the individual is strong enough. And by strong enough, I mean till those needs have been met so that they don't continue to build their own lives. Our business programs should look at the reality of the business environment in Grenada. What does it actually cost to start a business? And what does it take, not just in funding, but in coaching and support over the long term to get your business off the ground and over the curve so that you could become profitable? And again, it goes back to an assessment of needs and valuing the individual and the individual potential, because power resides in every single individual, regardless of our economic circumstances. And it's time for us now to have implementable systems. Whatever policies are in place that work, wonderful, we're happy for them. Okay. Now let's put sustainable systems in place to ensure that they are realized at the grassroots level of our country. And I'm happy that I'm seeing Katisha, she's nodding her head in approval. Katisha, we have a very youthful, they said more than 35% of our population is under the age of 20. Pretty young population we have. Teenage pregnancy, the issue, increasing occurrence of consumption of alcohol has become almost a plague in our society, not just among traditionally men, but now more and more women. They're into the heavy consumption of alcohol. There's the social challenges, the medical challenges to that. But yet, for instance, years ago, there was a Carlton home, which of course, provided solutions for persons that suffer from alcoholism. However, that has been a conversation of the past. You as a woman in politics, what can you say to the Grenadian people that you're willing and committed to offering them when it comes to the issue of, one, dealing with teenage pregnancy, which to me helps to add the burden of unemployment, and two, the issue of alcoholism, increasing challenge of consumption of alcohol among our women in society? What can you offer them, Katisha?
Well, individually, well, when I say I, well, I'm not going to say I, I'm going to say we, because I'm a part of a team. But I think, yes, those are societal ills that we have recognized. You see, I believe there is only so much a government and people in power can do, apart from setting a good example. I think, too, there needs to be some personal responsibility on the part of our citizens, the way that they socialize and raise their children in their homes, teaching them at an early age that everything should be done in moderation. Excessive drinking is not the way. Giving them the proper tutelage when it comes to sexual health and sexual relationships, and that starts in the home. The school can only do so much. The ministry can only do so much. Our leaders can only do so much. But there needs to be some sort of personal responsibility on the part of our Grenadians. Now, at a governmental level, we have done sensitization with respect to responsible sexual behaviors. There are programs in the school that have been rolled out, have been implemented. There is the availability of contraception at clinics and different NGOs. And there are certain subjects that tackle those issues and that are part of the school curriculum, such as health and family life education. In my younger days, I was part of a promotional campaign encouraging children to stay in school and work hard and not to engage in sexual activities. But
some say that's old school, archaic. That's old people thing.
I wouldn't say it's old people. I think it's important that we still keep those messages out there. We still promote these messages. But it's also important that we have the facilities and programs here to take care of our children when they bear the consequences of not listening to us. So the program for adolescent mothers, for example, there are 2 centers now, I believe, that take care of our teenage mothers, that enable them to finish their education while providing a safe place for their children. The Ministry of Social Development has a whole network of programs dedicated to not only helping women but young people. So for example, apart from the gender-based violence unit, there's a counseling unit that provides counseling not only at the ministry level but in churches and in schools. There is I think the counseling unit is part of a larger psychosocial unit that provides help to persons dealing with mental health issues. There's also a unit that deals with elderly care. So there is a network that currently exists, and that has been successful in serving thousands, and I don't exaggerate that number, thousands of young women, thousands of persons affected by these societal ills. But I would like to encourage young people and women that if they are in a place where they're turning to alcohol or other illicit substances to pacify themselves or to soothe whatever may be tormenting them, there are resources available.
Hold it for me.
There is
But
yes.
You said to them to soothe whatever is tormenting them. And many have argued that they've turned to the use of drugs. What is what's under there is the frustration, the anger of not getting what they want from their leaders. Leaders in the... Leaders
I think that's a pretty bold statement to say.
No, and I'm allowed to make a bold statement, and you're allowed to. Well, let me put it in context for you.
Yes.
Let me put it in context for you. In the context that the masses, when I read get a statement last year. People put politicians, individuals in power to serve. Yes. But when you put them to serve, there are reasonable expectations that one, you serve the interests, your own interests, and also you serve my personal interests as a nation. Some have argued that individuals, young people, are turning to drugs because of frustration, the unemployment, lack of having nothing to do. I've gone to secondary, I have a master's, a bachelor's degree. I come back home and there's nothing for me to do. What's the answer? The rum culture that we have developed, not just in Grenada, but in the Caribbean, that is now destroying us.
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons for that. Of course, frustration because of lack of opportunities, lack of employment can be one facet of that. But I think to counter that, we have to do and continue to provide as many opportunities, as many avenues for young people so that they would not resort to that sort of lifestyle. So that is what I've been speaking. I think in the first question you asked when you spoke about unemployment, we recognize the problem and we recognize that there are frustrations. But what we have to do as government is to continue to implement these policies and programs that will alleviate these frustrations.
Okay. And I must say, in all fairness, to add to your argument, the Bacolod Center certainly is a glaring example of what the government has done to address, and I'm not sure if it's dealing with the root cause though, but it's probably just trying to, it provides at least a way out. As to whether it addresses the root cause, I'm not quite sure.
It's a rehabilitation center, first and foremost. So they have counseling. They are assessed when they get there, and a treatment plan is developed based on that individual.
And then some have argued they go through that revolving door when they get out.
The intention is for them not to go through a revolving door.
Well, let's hold it right there. Claudette, I'm coming over to you. I did tell you for the next one we get in up close and personal. Claudette?
I was just wondering if I was still part of the conversation.
No. I'm coming to you. do not fear. Claudette, we in a modern society, we consider ourselves to be a Christian society. We talked about the traditionalist views of family raising, where the patriarchal role has become and continues to be that driving force that seems to consider women to be secondary. There are some within our societies, males that is, while they encourage the assertion and the growth and advancement of women, there are fears that it is as what we've seen is not necessarily even in out of the playing field, but a feminist agenda in disguise. And they are worried. And as such, there is that territorial guarding. I do not want to give up too much to the women because there's a feminist agenda behind it.
Well, before I speak to that bizarre proposition that you just put there.
Bizarre, you say?
Just a few things. Again, just to point out to my sister Katisha and listeners. The Bacolod Center was in fact a project of the National Democratic Congress, opened shortly after the 2013 general elections. That's one. Now, earlier on, you read a quote, and I did not get to comment on it, and I really want to. You read a quote from an American politician, it was, who said that it's time to have more women in the corridors of power and all of that. And that was the point I was making earlier on. If you are in a position of influence, then you must influence. You must influence positive change. Because people like myself and the other women in politics, I'm sure, I've gotten into politics because I see as a nation we can do better in so many areas. And I believe that with the blessings that this very society has given to me, much is expected, and I'm prepared to return some of these blessings in selfless service. And I'm sure something similar has inspired the other women who are in politics across the political divide. So that when you find yourself there in the corridors of power, as the quotation you read mentioned, or in the boardroom, so to speak, in the boardroom of the state, of the governance of the state, you better influence. You better let your presence be felt. You better be impactful. And I say that we are not feeling that with the 46% representation that we have in the corridors of power in Grenada. Now, you are absolutely right, Joseph. I canvass people on the ground every day campaigning as a candidate in the upcoming elections. And the primary reason why our young men and women turn to substance abuse, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, or cocaine, or any other kind of drugs, is They are frustrated. They cannot find a job. They cannot take care of their children. They don't see a brighter future. They have lost hope. And this is what the National Democratic Congress is saying to our people. We are going to address the issues that stress you out and frustrate you, such as ensuring that rather than contract labor, temporary labor, Imani work, we are going to give our young people permanent employment. We are going to give our young people serious educational opportunities, both technically, the technical and vocational skills, and in the academic arena, so that you can see a path. You can see a path out of poverty. And you are absolutely right. It is the stress and the frustration that cause our people to turn to a substance abuse. And what the National Democratic Congress certainly will not do, while we are proposing very strenuously for the legalization of marijuana for economic purposes, so that we can derive revenues as a country from the exploitation of marijuana, principally for medicinal and such purposes. What we will not do is what this government is in the process of doing, which is to recklessly amend the Drug Abuse and Prevention Act to basically allow people to smoke weed and traffic weed willy-nilly all over the place without proper checks and balances and without a designated center in our country for
let me make sure I hear you right, Claudette. You said the government is doing what?
We do not have a place
Claudette,
for people to get treatment, but the effect of this amendment is what that will result in more substance
Claudette,
abuse.
What is it you said the government, is it the government encouraging or allowing people to do that?
No,
is that
I'm
what you
saying
said?
the amendment to the Drug Abuse and Prevention Act,
Okay.
which they style as a decriminalization of marijuana,
Okay.
is a right move.
Okay, we're
When you look
going
at
to
the
get back to that.
effect and
But
how
I've noticed, though, Claudette, that while you're giving me so much information, you've danced away like a ballerina from my question. Claudette?
I asked the Minister of Agriculture on the last time I was on a program with him discussing this very topic. I asked him to seriously go back and revisit the proposed amendment.
And I'm agreeing with you that we can certainly attend to that in a different form, a different forum. But I'm saying,
Yes.
I've noticed, I'm not sure if it's deliberate or otherwise, that you've danced away like a young ballerina
Right.
from answering my question.
I'm coming to the question you asked about it.
Oh, I was wondering.
I'm not quoting you, but I get the impression you were saying that all this pushing of women as a clandestine takeover of sorts.
Yes, the feminist agenda. What say you? And our Christian society is guiding their grounds.
What I see here is just a balancing of the gender, an attempt of the genders, an attempt to bring some degree of equity and equilibrium so that we all can equally contribute to the development of our civilization. So that similarly, as Andrea was saying earlier, if you have programs that are geared at empowering women, so to speak, and ignores the impact that those programs or the potential negative impacts that those programs will have on men, you will not get a well-balanced society and you will not get the best results. So I don't think there's any clandestine move there to reverse the roles, so to speak. No, that we have to face the fact, and all the statistics show that women are still very much disadvantaged across the board.
Okay.
Wages, opportunities, employment, education, all of that. Right? Education, we are getting there because we are seeing some balance and we are seeing, in some instances, more women graduating than men. But at the same time, we should not leave our men behind, because to have a well-ordered and a well-balanced society, you need both genders to play their roles equally.
Thank you.
So now I don't see that. I don't see that at all.
I think, Andrea, you wanted to weigh in on something that's bothering you, my dear lady?
Not bothering me, because we have a solution for that too. Two things. One is that there's a lot of talk about education for women. And I referred earlier to an assessment of needs and a circular system that addresses everything. Mm-hmm. We can continue to educate our young people, both male and female, till the cows come home, unless our economy provides an environment for them to apply that education toward future prosperity and growth, mm-hmm. then we still have frustration and we still have poverty. We need to develop an ecosystem. So now that we're educating them, what are we educating our young people for? Where is that going? What are they gaining out of this education?
How do we develop that ecosystem, though? If I can ask you to condense it for me.
Oh, yes.
How do we, 30 seconds. How do we develop that ecosystem?
First of all, we elevate our resources. We undervalue our resources, and the resources that we have in Grenada are demanded on a global level, and we do have enough of them to make a contribution, which brings a strength to our economy. We need to attract investors. So let's look at our agriculture and natural resources, which also includes renewable energy, right? So that's one package. Move over in the cycle. We need investors. Because of the state of our economy, we need investors to be able to power the production in this area. So we need to become attractive to investors by having honest government, honest dealings, and also to set parameters for those investors so that when they come, our society prospers. Our economy is built.
But the investors are here.
Investors are here, but are they here as pirates? Or are they here as contributors
to our economic?
It's a rhetorical question. It's a rhetorical question, because there needs to be a criteria that investment must have social responsibility to our people, So investors can come in, but are they buying our land so that now there's less land for our own native ownership? So this is one part of the ecosystem, creating an investment policy that's attractive to investors but protective of our people. Okay. So now the money's here. What happens next? We have a CBI program. Where's that money going? First of all, alter that. We don't need to sell our passports. But if we do, that money should go to education and entrepreneurship, to two areas that are cost heavy, that will develop our people. So this ecosystem, and I can keep going, healthcare and wellness has a great impact on productivity. Healthy people do more. Mental health, physical health, emotional health. Again, looking at what we need in our country and understanding that every sector has an impact on every other sector, and that our people are the major resources in each of these sectors. So we take care of our people and we create policies that we can implement and trust our people. Trust our people. Grenadians are not trusting because they have not been trusted, and they have not had trustworthy government. We need to trust our people and give them trustworthy governance so that we could develop a business model style leadership.
So are you suggesting that they have not had faith and trust in our dear senator that is sitting right next to you?
Well, our dear senator have quoted many policies and initiatives that they've done, but if you walk into any Grenadian community and ask, I guarantee you that there isn't a wide, vast knowledge or implementation of them, which takes me to, as Claudette nicely said, the revolving door in social services, and many of these programs where families have been in social services for over 5 years. The grandmother was in it, now the mom is in it, and the daughter is coming in, because there has not been a holistic approach, an ecosystem approach to complete development. And unless we develop our people, we will not develop our country. And government is not to develop their businesses on the backs of our people. Government is not to develop their pockets, send their children off for scholarships in universities in England and the US, while the average hardworking Grenadian has no possibility to do that.
Okay.
We could bring a university here, create our own resources here, so that every Grenadian comes out of high school and goes into free university. It's available in other places in the world, and it's not difficult for us because we have an educated academic community in Grenada that's willing to put their hand to the plow.
Katisha, is she making sense, or that's just a pie in the sky figment of her imagination? Some Johnny that she slept and made this thing up. Is this really making sense to you?
I don't want to comment directly on her.
Well, you ought to
give an assessment of her comments.
You ought to. This is why we're here.
A few things I want to touch on that were mentioned. Now, Ms. Joseph, we've seen Ms. Joseph has developed a habit of mentioning specifically this project was done by the NDC or not. We're a government for all the people, and whatever programs and policies that were put in place, our job is to continue it as best we can and develop it. Number one, so I will just leave that there. Also, just touching on what Andrea mentioned about CBI, part of the CBI program involves a national transformation fund where a lot of these funds are allocated to, and they are devoted to a number of social programs. Every single project that is suggested, every single program that that is implemented first has to go through an assessment, which includes an assessment of the impact on genders, whether it's male or female. It's required by the Public Finance Management Act, and that process, which is gender mainstreaming, that has been inculcated into government's general processes.
Okay.
Every single project, every single program that is implemented, there's an assessment that is done to see how it impacts males as well as female, and that is part of our official policy. Now I want to touch on the question that you asked Claudette about the feminist agenda. I think that the focus these days, well, that's how I think that's how you couched it. I can't remember your exact phrasing, but it was something about the feminists trying to take over and the men feeling uncomfortable. But I think that there is an incorrect approach, and I don't mean to be controversial here, globally.
Please be controversial if you
globally,
need to be.
When it comes to gender issues, there seems to be a focus on gender parity or equality of outcomes. So then the focus is, let us have an equal amount of males and females in a certain sector, right? Let us hire 5 males, let us hire 5 females. Let us have 10 members of parliament who are male, let us have 10 members of parliament who are female, which is gender parity, equality of outcomes. I think our focus needs to be on equality of opportunities, because males and females are different. And a lot of the fields that we are interested in, a lot of the things that we engage in are dependent and determined by our biology to a certain degree. So because females are...
For instance, what sort of fields?
For example, females are nurturers, so you may see more females gravitating towards professions such as nursing. That's just one example. Males are more physical, so you may see them gravitating towards more physical professions, construction. That's just an example. There are studies that have been done about that. So we cannot artificially determine the composition of certain areas. What we should focus on is making the opportunity to participate in these areas or to enter certain sectors. We have to ensure that these opportunities are equally available for both genders.
But I'm still getting the sense that even while you're making it available for both, I'm still getting the sense that you're highlighting that when you remove the veil, that there is always going to be a preference based on gender.
No,
so that if a woman goes to a construction site and she has to be to take a construction job, the first she said, well, I think you better go become a secretary. But and a male goes to become a nurse. But
she should have the opportunity, if she desires, to become a construction worker.
She should
have the opportunity, if he desires, to become a nurse. And I think that is the way to go, making opportunities equally available to both genders instead of setting quotas for a desired outcome. We may not have equal numbers of male and female nurses or male and female construction workers, but males and females should have the equal opportunity to enter these areas.
We're almost out of time, ladies, and I'm going to head back to Claudette. This is going to be my final question. We touched on it briefly. That seeming culture, Claudette, of lack of trust on the part of our leaders, is that factual or is that a figment of our imagination? Where the people, we do not trust our leaders, political leaders?
If you would permit me.
Permit you to answer, yes.
Just quickly before I answer that question, there was reference made, we're talking about developing our societies, and well, tonight we are zeroing in on women. And there was reference made to the CBI program and the funds from that program being put into a transformation fund, transformation being the operative word, so that our society, these funds can be applied for real transformative programs and policies that will develop and advance our people. I have a simple question. Where's the transformation? A report recently came out that in last year, 2021, Grenada yielded $100 million US. In fact, 281 million EC dollars out of the sale of passports, the CBI program. My question is, where is the transformation? If you go to St. Kitts, if you go to Dominica, if you go to those couple other islands, Antigua, you can actually see the transformation taking place in the programs, in the infrastructural development, in the healthcare. You can see these things happening.
Are you suggesting, Claudette, that there isn't transformation, or is that you're not seeing it?
Our people, yes. Secondly,
no, Claudette, I was asking you though, are you hinting that there has not been transformation, or is it that you are certain that you are not seeing it?
Well, there has been transformation. I'll tell you in what direction. In the direction of our people becoming poorer, because the poverty rate moved from 32% 10 years ago to about 45% now. It is going in the wrong direction, because the SEED program, which is a program developed actually and implemented by the National Democratic Congress when last it was in office, a social safety net program, all we are seeing now is more and more people being added to that program, which tells us that we have more and more poor people in Grenada. We are seeing more Imani. How many had? What, 2,000 or 3,000 added the other day? Young people added to the Imani program with no job security and being in perpetual training.
Claude,
so
I just want you, though, because we're running out of time. We have 10 minutes left in the program. So I'll be happy if you can answer my question, so that we can move on, because we're almost out of time. So the question I was asking you is regarding the issue of trust. Is there a trust issue with politicians?
There is, I would say that there is, and when we look at the performance of our leaders in recent years, certainly in the last 30 years. There's good reason for the people having little trust in politicians. And we of the new NDC are saying we are a group of young professionals. Some of us have been in politics a little longer than others. The good thing is that none of us were in any cabinet in the past on either side. All of us are successful in our various endeavors, in our various professions and vocations, and we see that our country needs us now more than ever.
Should we be worried, though, Claudette?
Come together to offer new hope and new promise and new development and progress for our country, Grenada.
Should we as a people be worried, though, that maybe the new crop of political aspirants we have in the NDC may sooner rather than later become untrustworthy as those of the past? Should I be worried about that?
That's not going to happen because we are people of our word, and we are serious about moving our country forward.
Okay,
Dead serious.
We
won't leave our comfortable lives to delve into Canadian politics.
It's never going to happen, as Claudia says.
Serious about moving forward.
Good, and you'll stay that way till the rest of our lives. Amen. Sinai. Lady Katisha Williams, do you get the sense that it's a trust issue, a disconnect, general populace, politicians, and the rest of us, we just...
I don't believe so. I think this government has demonstrated through successive terms that it has the confidence of the Grenadian people, and if that weren't so, then we would not have been elected so definitively as we have for the last 2 terms. I would just like to mention here, because Claudette has been insinuating that things are just getting worse in this country.
And you don't agree?
Of the leadership, and I don't agree. I mean, in 2013, when her party was in power, the unemployment rate was 40%, as compared to 15.2 at the end of 2019. And then, of course, we had COVID. Today, it's like 16.6%. There has been, and since then, since 2013, the Grenada has been growing at steadily at an average rate of 4.4%, the highest in the OECS region. Claudette mentioned that she's seeing transformation in other countries. I just wonder how genuine that comment is, because
you think she's lying?
No. I'm just saying that I have had the privilege to attend various fora with different with leaders of the region, of course, accompanying the head of government, Prime Minister the Honorable Keith Mitchell, and Grenada has always been lauded among its peers for our excellent financial management, meeting our regional financial obligations, our many programs and policies, even something as small as continuing to pay our workers during a pandemic, and just historically paying.
But that is also payment on that comes on the heels of the fact that Grenada, among other countries, the unemployment, our salary scales, the fact that we have not, most will tell you, they have not had an increase in the last 10 to 15 years. TAMCC, for example.
Yes, but our public servants we're able to keep the promise that we made to our public servants to honor their gradual 3%, 4% increases. And
but that's just in the wake of inflation that is skyrocketing.
And we have managed to do that in the face of inflation, in the face of a pandemic. And I mean, there's a reason that our Minister of Finance was awarded the best finance minister in recent times. We have demonstrated continuously that we are very competent in managing this country and taking this country forward. And Grenada has, in fact, transformed over the years under the leadership of this government.
We have to leave that there for the purpose of time, because I need
solid evidence of that.
Empirical data that cannot be refuted.
That cannot be refuted.
If you say so, we're not here to, the public will be the judge. Andrea, skepticism, raising of eyebrows when our political stalwarts, they approach our door, we start thinking, no can do. Is that a figment of imagination, or is that as true as it is?
It is true, and I don't think plastic surgery on the opposition party means that it changed. Neither do I think that with the issues that we have, there is evidence that 27 years has been at its most fruitful potential for our incumbent. So I do raise my eyebrows in several situations in the conversation. So at the same time, I must say, in all fairness, that I do applaud these two ladies for taking up the mantle to even step forward in the public arena to represent their communities and to get politically involved. But as we're talking about women in politics, and I'm hoping that young women are listening to us and seeing something that is attractive and that you want to get involved in national leadership, I will say it is very important to define what it is you want to bring to the country. In power, we've defined it: prosperity, opportunity, wellness, equality, and regional impact. It's very clear to us in power that the past 30 years that was referred to, there are no stones for us to throw. We have solutions. We have solutions. We know how to get it done. We know how to fix the country, and there is a lot of brokenness. The comparisons that are made tonight with other countries within the OECS, the entire Caribbean has a great deprivation of leadership. So we are comparing ourselves to other broken societies who all are asking for power. So then I would say to you tonight, to judge everything that you've heard based on what you're experiencing. Okay. So if you are experiencing incredible growth and development since this incumbent has been in office, then stick with it.
Will you, from power, would you be entering the political arena for this election cycle? Will you be tendering a slate of candidates? Yes, no?
You'll find that out at our press brief.
You have a press brief this time?
We will have a press brief and we'll tell you more.
Time will tell. I want to ask, ladies, we're getting ready to wrap. Final question, final question, yes or no. Andrea, is Grenada ready for a female prime minister? Yes or no?
Yes.
Katisha, are we ready for a female prime minister?
Of course.
Claudette, are we ready for a female prime minister?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And there's only one party offering what we're ready for.
Well, the fact that we're ready for a female prime minister, there's this quotation that says, the biggest challenge facing women today is patriarchy. This is especially evident in the realm of politics. Regardless of women's experience, education, or ability, the patriarchal nature within us and society fosters the perception that women are less qualified and less competent than men. When patriarchy has done what it has done is convince people that a strong and intelligent woman represents a problem, a disruption to the social order rather than an integral part of it. With that being said, that's where I'll surrender the argument this evening. We continue to next week though. Yes, Katisha, it's a final question.
That statement was was interesting.
Just we leave it right there.
Yes.
Grenada character Peter Martin, this is where we end the conversation this evening. I want to say thanks to my esteemed panel of ladies who joined us remotely. Claudette Joseph, representing the National Democratic Congress. Thank you, Claudette. While you're a bit under the weather, you did, of course, make sure you upheld your obligations to be here. Katisha, Senator Katisha Williams from the New National Party and representing Power, Andrea Rapier. Should we say that the power is in your hand? I don't know.
All the power to you.
Or maybe this is just the Powerpuff ladies. Remember, this is where we leave the conversation for now. We'll be back with you next week, Wednesday, when we start the conversation all over again on Election Watch. Until then, continue to find your rhythm, find your position in life, and do what you do best, fulfill your God-given potential. Have a good night, Grenada. God bless. Thank you, ladies.